Are you strategic? The answer can make or break your business. Welcome to Strategic Minds, the podcast where we'll do a deep dive into conversations with extraordinary leaders and world-class performers to learn how they think, plan, and act strategically. I'm your host, Rich Horwath, author of 8 books on strategic thinking, including my newest book, Strategic. And my vision is to teach the world to be strategic. Now, let's explore Strategic Minds.
We're stuck.
What do we do? I have no idea.
You need a new strategy.
We need a more dynamic strategy.
The strategy?
You have to strategize.
But you won't strategize.
Let's talk a little strategy.
Welcome to Strategic Minds. I'm excited to chat with my guest today, Dr. Jason Selk. Jason's considered one of the top performance coaches in the world, working with Olympic and professional athletes from the PGA, WPGA, NASCAR, NFL, MLB, NBA, WNBA, and NHL, in addition to business executives from companies such as American Funds, Morgan Stanley, and Enterprise. While serving as director of sports psychology for the St. Louis Cardinals, Jason helped the team win 2 World Series in a 6-year period. He's written 5 best-selling books and has become widely acclaimed as one of the most sought-after keynote speakers in the country. Jason specializes in assisting teams and individuals to develop the mental toughness necessary to overcome obstacles and outperform the competition, and he does so while improving life balance and health for his clients. Jason, thanks for being on the show today.
Rich, it's nice. Can you keep saying all those nice things? That was really kind of starting to feel good here. Yeah, very nice to be with you, Rich.
Yeah, great to be with you too, Jason. I've got a number of your books in my personal library and have been a big fan of yours for a number of years. So really excited to get the chance to chat with you and dive into the information a little deeper today.
Well, in our conversation before, the fact that you know so much about me and that we do have some connections, we talked about a few of those things. It means a lot. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent. Let's begin then with your origin story. Maybe you could share with us where you grew up and how that environment and the people there shaped who you are today.
Yeah, so I'm an Iowa boy. I grew up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, literally cornfields on all 4 sides of the house that I grew up in, lived all the way. I left at 17. But if you know anything about Iowa or the Midwest, you know that what you have is people, you've got just a very blue collar mentality, which I say that with the most respect. People work hard. They know the difference between right or wrong. And what I learned growing up with those folks is just the importance. John Wooden talks about this. I've done all this research on, okay, what are the personality types that do well on teams, whether it be in the sports world, the business world, and you really have these 2 commonalities. Coach Wooden in his pyramid of success, he called it, and these were the foundation pieces, the 2 corner pieces on the bottom row: industriousness, which is work ethic, and then enthusiasm, which is positive energy. And so what I learned growing up in that environment was absolutely work ethic. But the part that I don't know that many people know is that when you have farmers and construction workers and machinists and, really like people who are out there getting after it all day, if you don't have positive energy, those jobs are going to eat you up real fast.
Yep.
You'll never have a level of success and you won't make it long because it's just too much work. So I would tell you what I learned is work hard and have a smile on my face. Be happy that I've got a job. And that goes a long way these days, I think, at even now controlling outcomes and success.
Yeah. Great advice there. And love how you tied those into the values of the Midwest. Be interested, Jason, how did you start to develop the interest or the passion for human performance, for sports psychology, for helping athletes and now executives and leaders in all walks of life become their best self? What initially inspired that career trajectory for you?
Yeah, I think just as a child, it was part of me. I've always been kind of let's just say boisterous and loud. And so I think coaching came somewhat normal to me, but it was really just in my own journey as an athlete. I played football. I thought I was going to do really well with football. I got injured my senior year, blew my knee out. That was the end of football, obviously. Um, and I was going to a physical therapist. And I thought when I went to college that I wanted to be a physical therapist. I was a physical therapy major my first semester. And I actually realized a semester in that it wasn't the body that I got so much value from her healing. It was her teaching me how to deal with the loss of athletics. And that's when I, second semester, moved pretty quickly to sports psychology. And I knew, with my background in wanting to help, both my parents were counselors, were therapists. Like I said, I've always kind of been loud. I just kind of naturally gravitate, and I've had such great coaches over the years that I think I'm one of those really rare, lucky people that at an early age found that perfect fit. And once I found it, I knew I had it, and it was off to the races.
What did you learn from your parents as therapists growing up, either intentionally or unintentionally, maybe even through osmosis, about how they treated you around the house, with their expectations for you? Because I would imagine having therapists as parents is a different experience than a lot of folks go through.
Yeah, and I would tell you, I have said this my whole life. I feel like I've won the lottery a couple of times with my parents and with my children. My parents, I would tell you, I don't know if this is what it is with all therapists, but they taught me a couple of things. One, there's always a solution. So when we had problems, we literally had the family meeting once a week, and my brother and I used to roll our eyes and so forth. But look, what we learned is, okay, we're going to have problems as we grow. And when we have problems, we're going to talk about it, and we're going to talk about it in a way that gets it fixed pretty quickly. That was one thing it's probably my favorite quote from my latest book, Relentless Solution Focus. There's always a solution, always. The other thing, and this trumps everything else I've talked about, is I saw my parents. My mother really specialized. She was in Alzheimer's, so she specialized in elder care. And my dad was director of a youth shelter. And so I saw kind of different spectrums in terms of age, but there was never a time when I didn't see my parents prioritize helping other people. We were the family on Thanksgiving, getting up early and going and delivering Meals on Wheels to the elderly. And, my dad, no matter when or what was happening, if some of the kids needed his attention, he was going to be there for them. And, I don't know if it was nature or nurture on this one, probably both. But to me, I have built my career on helping people. I've been really lucky. I've had a lot of success. And sometimes, when you have success like that, financial rewards are in place. And that's been the case for me. But for me, it's always been about how can I help this person? And I teach that. I teach it because you have a lot of people out there who are so focused on income. You have a lot of coaches. I think it's my field in the last 3 years has been the fastest growing field in the country.
Wow.
Coaching. And you have a lot of people who are salespeople who are coaches, and that's fine. But you can't confuse. I would challenge people to not confuse coaching with sales.
Yes.
If you want to do really well in this field, your priority has got to be to help people, to make an impact. And, I use this quote often: impact increases income. Don't worry about income.
Yep.
Focus and worry about impact. And when that happens, income will be the natural result. But impact is what it's all about. And no doubt about it. That was the strongest thing I learned from my parents is it is our job to help and care for other people.
Yeah, those are powerful principles. One of the things I found really interesting in your book, 10-Minute Toughness, and that was, I think, the first experience I had with you years ago reading that book, was the experience that you had initially breaking into the profession. And it was earlier in your career, you had a great opportunity with the St. Louis Cardinals Major League Baseball team. Share with us a little bit about that experience, how you approached that experience, how you adapted during that experience, and what that taught you moving forward in your career.
Yeah, and 10-Minute Toughness is, the Cardinals are what gave me the opportunity to write the book. I can remember my first year with the team, I would be writing the book while I was required to be at one game a week, and I would sit in my little office and I would be writing, and players would pop in and say hello. But I remember writing it my very first year, and we won the World Series the first year. And then obviously getting a book deal was pretty easy after that. But
Right.
so when I got the job with the Cardinals, and I've told this story so many times, I mean, I had a contract that said I had the job for the entire 2006 season. The general manager of the team, Walt Jocketty, we had worked all the details out, all the pay, how many hours a week. I was going to go to spring training for a week to start the season. And anyway, I get to spring training. It was March 19th, 2006. And I was scheduled to do a 2-hour talk with the team. And Walt walks me into Tony La Russa's office, and Tony was the manager of the team at that point. And I thought it was weird that I wasn't meeting him until, a few minutes before I'm going to start with this 2-hour presentation, and I'm going to do 2 hours every day that week. And then, 20 hours a week for the whole season. Anyway, I walk in and I could tell something was off right away.
Yeah.
Anyway, Tony ends up, basically ignoring anything that I was saying in that that short 3-4 minute meeting. And he walks out and says, well, you have 10 minutes with the team. And I was just thinking, well, I have a contract that actually says I've got 2 hours, and I got to, I started thinking about the contract, and I realized I was the only one that signed it. Nobody on their side had signed it. Now, I'm not an attorney, Rich, but
Right.
I can put 2 and 2 together pretty quickly. So, what did I learn from the experience? I learned from the experience, you better be prepared no matter what. The other thing I learned, and I learned this over the 6 years working with him, and, I was able to get Tony's attention in the first 10 minutes enough where he allowed me to stay that first day for 2 hours and then come back every day for 2 hours that week, and then 20 hours a week for the next 6 years. We won 2 World Series. And what I learned, and my learning went to the next level from guys like Tony La Russa and Dave Duncan. They were so, talk about the ability to be around great coaches. Those two are top notch when it comes to coaching. And I learned a couple of things. Number one, preparation and expectation must be extremely high. They talk about this in the military. I've got a lot of very high-end military connections, and there's some real parallels here. In the military, they say phase 1 of performance is you must have high standards.
Mm-hmm.
And what I learned, when you're in the major leagues, you're definitely not in the bush leagues anymore. I mean, showing up a minute late you don't get second chances.
Mm-hmm.
Hence, when I showed up a minute late on you today, you could see on my face, I think, and it's interesting. You all approach it kind of the same way. You're not even late. Well, I was late. I was a minute late. You said 4:45. It was 4:46. I can see the clock. And you learn to have high standards, because that gets you fired. One time, 1 minute gets you fired. Mm-hmm. And it's not just that. It's not about the 1 minute. It's about the level of preparation and how seriously you're taking it. I'll tell you another thing I really learned was you never can be surprised by adversity. Mm-hmm. So kind of just to give you an example, you these days you might show up late to a meeting because traffic was unexpectedly bad.
Yeah.
That in the major leagues, nobody cares if traffic's bad. If traffic's bad, you should have left earlier. But now that you didn't, you are sending us a message that you don't belong at this level because you don't understand what holding yourself to a higher standard looks like. Now, again, it's a very small example of that, but you take that and apply it out to basically everything, and all of a sudden performance starts to show up at a much higher level. You're taking things much more seriously. So, over the years, I felt very fortunate that Tony gave me a chance. I was prepared for that chance. Mm-hmm. I walked in, and when I heard I only had 10 minutes, I didn't freak out. I was prepared. I'd been preparing for months on what I was going to say and what I was going to do. And so even when adversity strikes, if you're prepared, you're able to oftentimes deal with it at a pretty high level. And that's what happened. And then I take my craft and always have very seriously. And then just being able to be around, and they're not just major league coaches and managers. I mean, they're the best of the best. Dave Duncan and Tony La Russa will go down as two of the greatest coaches in the history of Major League Baseball, literally.
Yeah.
And so being able to be around that level of excellence, you just pick up a lot. And I would just tell you the two probably biggest takeaways there that helped me take my game to the next level were: you must have high standards. Anything less is unacceptable. Excuses don't count. And you don't get to be surprised by adversity. Mentally tough people are not surprised when bad things happen.
Yeah, a lot of great stuff to unpack there. The high standards, the preparation. I would challenge all the people listening out there today to think about preparation, especially for your business leaders out there. How often are you preparing for the meetings that you're attending? Are we just winging it and going into those meetings because they're stacked one after another? Or are we actually, as Jason's talking about here, are we doing some real preparation so that we're prepared if things aren't going well, if the conversation takes a different turn? Are we ready to adapt, as Jason talks about there? So a lot of great stuff there. I want to take a quick moment to thank everyone who's been sharing the Strategic Minds podcast. Your support is what helps us grow and reach more leaders who want to think and act strategically. If you've been finding value in these conversations, I'd love for you to follow in their footsteps. Share the podcast with a few friends or colleagues in your network who you think would benefit from becoming more strategic in their work. Your word of mouth makes all the difference, and I truly appreciate it. Are you a high potential leader but feel like you're spread too thin, too many priorities, too many fire drills, and not enough time to think? Then how exactly are you going to prepare yourself to get promoted to the next level? Simple, you practice. The Strategic Fitness System is your place to practice the skills and gain the confidence to prepare to succeed at the next level. At the heart of the system are 50 workouts, each of which consists of a video, reading, tool to practice, and digital journal. And the beauty is, each workout only takes 10 to 20 minutes to complete. Research shows that nearly 30% of leaders fail in their first 18 months of a new leadership role. Are you willing to take that risk with your career? If you're ready to take control of your future and develop the skills and confidence to crush it at the next level, then subscribe to the Strategic Fitness System today and build your personal competitive advantage. For more information, visit strategyskills.com. After all, practice makes profit. Jason, you talked a few times today so far about mental toughness, and you're a thought leader in the area. You've written 5 books. Share with us a little bit about what is mental toughness, and how do you define that, and what does that look like in a person's everyday life?
Yeah, you got me on a day. I told you I was on calls all day, and some of them kind of tough with some college football stuff that's going on. Here's what I'll tell you what mental toughness is not. How about we start with that? I'll tell you what mental toughness is not. It's not a pep talk. And that's what most people still think it is. I love this quote. It's not the, I'm cautious even saying this. The Navy SEALs have said that they originated this quote. They actually didn't, but they take credit for it. So I'm not going to fight with any person in military service. I have utmost respect. Anyway, the quote is, under pressure, you do not rise to the occasion, but rather you sink to the level of your training. Mm-hmm. And what people look at still as mental toughness is kind of like a pep talk. They're not training for it. And if you don't train for mental toughness, just like if you don't train for physical toughness, mm-hmm. Like if my bicep just isn't strong, if I'm not doing the training, and then there's a day for whatever reason that I gotta lift it or I'm gonna fail, I'm gonna fail.
Yeah.
I can't pep talk myself into being, you have these stories about, the car overturned on the mother and she was able to find the strength to lift a car off of her child. Okay. But that's not happening every day. And what people are doing is we're showing up way underprepared and hoping for mental toughness. I heard this from the leadership of Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I was in one of the meetings one time, and they said, hope is not a strategy used here at Enterprise.
Mm.
And look, if you want to have mental toughness, you must train your brain to be able to be mentally tough in those situations when it's necessary. And I'll tell you, when you're winning games, nobody needs mental toughness. When you're ahead 6-1 on the scoreboard or 45-21 on the score, you don't need mental toughness there. You really don't.
Right.
It's when you're the 1 and the other team has 6, you're the 21 and the other team has 45. That's when you need it. Or after a loss, so that a loss doesn't become 3 losses. That's when you need it. And most people, again, they try to be mentally tough from like a pep talk. 10-minute toughness, we talked about that. That was my first book. And I got the book deal after the Cardinals won the World Series that very first year. That book is on pace to be one of the best-selling sports psychology books of all time. And it's still relevant today because it, for the first time, introduced specifically what mental training looks like. And I would tell you, I wrote that book in 2006. I think it was published early 2008. So what's that? That's almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Those are still the same principles I'm working with. And I think you know this about my career. I can't handle the business I have. I've been sold out for 20 years. Since the Cardinals, I've been sold out. I do my homework. I research. I can't find better mental training than what we first came up with, even back in 2006 in 10-minute toughness. Now, there are some adjustments to mental workouts and success logs, but they're adjustments. The concept, again, is you want to be mentally tough. Don't treat it like a pep talk. You better figure out what the equivalent of doing the bicep curls are. And I would tell you, on a daily basis, or at least 3 or 4 days a week, a person needs to be doing something called mental workouts and success logs.
Yeah, one of the really thought-provoking things that I've found in your work is this idea that we will never be able to outperform or underperform our self-image for very long. And you address that with that mental framework, the identity statement. Share with us your thoughts about that, because I find in business oftentimes people we're not really giving ourselves time to reflect on what is our self-image. What is the self-image that we really believe that we can use to bring value to the people that we're serving? So, Jason, share with us a little bit of your perspectives on self-image and the identity statement and how people can start to do a better job there.
Yeah, so that's Maxwell Maltz's work. He wrote a groundbreaking book in 1970 called Psycho-Cybernetics.
Okay.
And, it's interesting. Tony La Russa actually suggested I read that book. It was the second day I met him, and I asked him, I said, hey, is there a book you think I should read? And I had read it already 3 or 4 times by the time I said that. And I think, it's probably one of the reasons he kept me around for 6 years is I did my homework. But in the book, Maltz says that exact quote: a person will not outperform, nor will they underperform their self-image for long. And in 1970, there wasn't a whole lot of science to support that. I know when I first read it, I thought it was a little bit hocus pocus. It felt a little bit soft to me. And so I actually spent a year trying to disprove it. And, when you're trying to disprove something, and then after trying to disprove it, you realize, oh, it's actually more true than it even seems to be when I first looked at it.
Yeah.
And the science behind it, and it's all confirmed even to this day in every sports psychology textbook, they'll say the same thing. Call it a little bit different terminology. Maltz called it self-image. We call it self-confidence. But all the research right now will tell you self-confidence is the number one variable for all human performance. And it goes back to something we were talking about a little bit earlier, is you must have those high standards. So most people are underperforming on their potential because they haven't realized what they actually want to be capable of. They haven't set the high standard. Now, when you're in a high-level military operation, or when you're in a professional sports organization, you don't really have much of a choice but to have those standards set really high. But most of us, you're in a day-to-day situation where nobody is expecting you to be best in the world. And, again, you look at it in the sports world, if you're not best in class, you get fired. That hurts. It's painful. In military, if you're not best in class, people die.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're just not, we don't, on a daily basis, we don't have those circumstances forcing us to operate at the high level. And if nobody's forcing you to, very rare will an individual do it themselves. But those are the ones who are the people who are cream of the crop, who are rising to the top. But if everybody started working on this, everyone raises their level of performance. And again, it's a tool in the mental workout. It's step number 2 in the mental workout called the identity statement, where you basically just decide what level of performance do you want to be at. And then what's that one most important action or activity daily that will cause that to happen? I've had a number. I'm going to give you 3 identity statements that I've used over the years. When I first started, now granted, none of this was true. This would have been like 2000. And I didn't get the job with the Cardinals until 2006. I didn't write 10-minute toughness until 2000. I started writing it in 2005, 2006. So this is 5 years prior to that. I'm just learning about this stuff. I'm just out of graduate school, just starting my private practice. None of this was true.
Okay.
I started saying to myself, I outwork the competition every day. I am the most effective sports psychology consultant in the world. I wasn't even the best on my street. I'm not kidding. I lived in St. Louis, and the sports psychologist for the St. Louis Blues, now, granted, it was a different part of town, several miles down the road, but it was the same road. He lived on the same street as me. And he was clearly a better sports psychologist than me. So none of it was true. I wasn't outworking anyone. I didn't even know what hard work looked like at that point. And I certainly wasn't the best in the world at my craft. But I started telling myself that every day. And then after a few months, I started believing it. And once I started believing it, that's where I think my competition probably started to notice me coming up and taking some of their business. Okay, so that was my first one. My second one was I outwork the competition every day. I am the most effective performance coach and speaker in the country. Very similar to the first one. Again, those things, when I came up with the second one, they were starting to be a whole lot more true than the first one. Now mine is, and I've been kind of working on it in the last month or two. So I'm still kind of toying with the words, but here's my identity statement now. My passion for helping is endless. My talent and opportunity has no bound. I am the most effective performance coach and speaker in the country. We, when I say we, it's my kids are all coming into business, run the most effective boutique consulting firm in the world. Now, again, that's me setting the high standard. It's me answering to me, but I say it pretty much every day to myself. And once you start to believe, that's when it becomes difficult to underperform on your self-image. Back what Maltz used to say. I'm going to say that quote again so people remember now. You will not outperform, nor will you underperform for long your self-image. Start with high standards. And again, it's a pep talk until you actually create an identity statement and then start telling yourself on a daily basis. See, I'm training my mind that that's where the high standard is. And anything under that, I feel the underperformance. And then I feel like I'm losing. It's like a college football coach losing a game. You don't want to lose next week. So you find a way to work a little bit better, a little bit harder this week so that you can win next week. That's what Maltz meant. But again, most people look at this stuff as a pep talk. Until you're training it, it's just a pep talk and it's not going to do much for you.
Well, that's such a key piece. I want folks to underline that out there. Jason just said you're training it. And again, and you use a great example earlier with, the bicep and the muscle. And, you got to train your muscles physically for them to work at the times that you want them to work. But again, as business leaders, we've got to ask ourselves, are we training ourselves in the skill sets, the identity. Jason talked about performance statements. And are we setting the standards for ourselves and for our teams high enough that we're actually going to increase our performance? Because if we're not giving ourselves permission, and Jason, I love the example that you just shared saying, look, I wasn't even the best one on my street, but that's what I was telling myself. And I think a lot of us feel like we don't have the right or the permission to even say to ourselves that we're the best on the street, the best in the country, the best in the world. But that's what it takes in order for us to rise to that level. So I love the way that you put that together. I do a lot of strategic planning with executive teams, helping them set their plans for the year. We do a lot of goal setting. And I know in looking at your work, you've got some very helpful ways to think about goals, to distinguish between types of goals. Maybe you could share your perspectives on goal setting.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you that story. I know we talked about it before, but I'm going to tell it again because I think it's really important. So this would have been December 18th, 2023.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hired by a very large 77,000 person company to come in and work with their executive team, 11 of them. And I've been working with them, with the CEO of the company for a long time. And anyway, it's a very early morning meeting, and I was going to talk about something else, and I see their company handbook, and it was this thick. It was like a phone book, and I thought, oh, geez, we maybe need to get back to the basics here. Anyway, so there's 11 people in this boardroom, and I asked 2 questions. I said, how many of you can tell me what the one most important result goal this 12 months this company's trying to accomplish? Mm-hmm. I want you to think, think high. I think you know the answer to this. Well, let's see if you can remember. So there's 11 people there. How many different answers did I get?
9.
10. Right? And then okay, so think about that. If you've got, and that's the top 11 in a 77,000 person company, if you have top 11 and there's 10 different answers of what our really number one most exciting, important goal is, what's the likelihood of hitting any of them? But we got to put a little time and effort into figuring out what is actually the most important. Like, it needs to be a unified goal. So that's, you're talking about strategic planning with a company. I'm not going anywhere without starting here.
Yes.
What is our one? And you say, well, we can't just have one. I understand that, but you can have one that's most important. You can have your 100 if you want, but if you look at science, channel capacity, it's probably not a great idea to have a whole lot of them.
Right.
If you have a bunch, that's fine. But what's the one most important? You must do that. And then I said, okay, so we're all over the board on even knowing what we're trying to accomplish. What then is the likelihood that each person, 77,000 employees, what percent of the 77,000 are showing up knowing what their single most important activity is daily for the team to win, and then actually getting that done? Now, Gallup, it was actually the same. Their answer was the same as what Gallup research did years ago. Mm-hmm. Do you remember now think low, what percent of people are typically showing up knowing and executing their single most important task daily?
30?
20.
35?
20%.
Wow.
So we focused on it for a year, and I call it one must saturation. Everybody on the team needs to know what the one most important activity, what do I need to do above and beyond anything else today? Mm-hmm. I got 8 hours of work, fine, but I got to get the one most, and I want to get it done early in the day. Getting it done early in the day increases the likelihood it gets done, and then it also has this kind of biohack where if I get my most important activity done early, my brain knows it's on offense. My brain knows it's operating at a high level, and it pushes positive neurotransmitters into my bloodstream, making it, I have better energy, I'm smarter. The whole day goes better when I start on offense. Okay, but for a year, we focused on the one must. Now, we didn't move from 20% to 90%, but we did feel like after a year, we were closer to 40%. Every time I came in, and when a company hires me like this, I'm typically talking to them 10, 12 times a year. And I ask the leadership every time, you don't have to spend a lot of time on it, spend 6 seconds and just use the phrase, 1 to 10, how well are you doing on getting your one must done each day? But we really, as a leadership team, had the approach of, we're going to talk consistently about one must saturation. After a year, we were closer to 40%. Stock price doubled.
Wow.
That's $1 billion company doubling stock price.
Jeez.
Now think, anybody out there, you got a lot of people in leadership, even if you're not in leadership, if you want to get in leadership or ownership, how often first of all, do you know what your one most exciting result goal is that you're trying to accomplish? And with that, do you know on a daily basis what's that single most important activity that needs to get done? And what percent of the time are you getting that one thing done? And if you were to increase the percentage of getting that one must done more often, what impact would it have on you achieving your goals? Now, you get about 60, 70% of the population, and I'm in this part of the population where my one must is the same every day. I've got actually 3 process goals. Probably shouldn't even have said that because I don't want to complicate this for people. Let's just keep it at the one. I know every day what my single most important activity is if I'm going to achieve my one most important result goal.
Yep.
I know what that is. And it's the same thing every day. For me, it's I got to write 15 minutes, and it's actually only 3 times a week. If I get writing done, I'm working on another book, but if I'm not working on a book, even still writing, whether it be, content for social media or just working on a kind of a project for another company or a team, writing 15 minutes a day to start the day, strategic writing, that does what I need it to do to hit my overall most important result goal. It doesn't change. Most people are in that population, but the higher up you go in leadership, like you have a CEO of a company, they have so many different most important activities daily that it's not the same thing every day.
Right.
So your one must changes daily, but you just simply ask yourself, okay, today, what is the one must? And I actually, one of the books I wrote, I think this is my 3rd book, Organize Tomorrow Today. We talked about this concept. If I write down today what my one most important for tomorrow is, the likelihood of me getting it done and getting it done well is significantly increased. So you might just have the habit of what we call Organize Tomorrow Today, that your one must would be just every day, Organize Tomorrow Today. Identify what your one must is for tomorrow. And then tomorrow, show up and get that one must done as early as possible.
Yeah, what's brilliant about that, there's a lot of brilliant things, but starting the day on offense, Jason, I can't tell you how many folks I talk to that start the day on defense, where they're reacting to text messages or emails, and the first 2-3 hours get completely moved off of their agenda, their priorities, onto other people's stuff. They're very reactive, the fire drills. And so I love that idea of using this as a way to trigger ourselves to start on offense each day. I think that's a huge win for people in and of it by itself. So that's a great one for folks to think about. You mentioned momentarily a second ago the idea of process goals, and maybe you could just share the distinction between a process goal and a result goal and why it's important to have both.
Yeah, and you're right. It's necessary to have both. A product goal is a result goal. So here's your kind of definition. And I use the terms product and process.
Gotcha.
A product goal is a 12-month or less result-oriented goal. So that's, lose 10 pounds. We want to do 12 million of revenue, whatever that kind of one most important yearly, we want to keep it in the 12-month or less, but have one. That's a product goal. The process goal is what's the single most important activity that done consistently will cause the result to happen. John Wooden at UCLA made this really popular 60 years ago. And then science has since confirmed the process mentality is the single most effective way for people to control results. And that's the thing about what I do is nobody cares about my opinion, but they sure want to know about science. And I don't talk, you want to know my opinion, ask me out for a beer. We'll go have a beer and we can talk opinion all day long. But if you're hiring me to come in, it's all about research. And this, you just can't argue with this research.
Right.
And the research is clear. If you want to control results, you must develop and train a process mentality. The process is the most important focus. Again, it's a little bit, back to impact increases income. If you focus on impact, you don't have to worry about the scoreboard. Focus on the process, you don't have to worry about scoreboard. I'll tell you another quick little story. This is a Coach Wooden special.
Yeah.
So remember, well, you may not remember this, but one of my best friends, I've written a couple of books with him, Tom Bartow.
Yeah.
Tom, and I have to say this, one of his favorite quotes: defense sucks. In the business world, defense sucks. I love that.
That's
okay,
great.
but Tom was literally best friends with Coach Wooden. That's how I actually got to spend some alone time with Coach Wooden. And, I was always a huge fan of Coach Wooden. And then I met Tom, and it was great because I got to actually meet one of my heroes. It was terrific. I got to pick his brain even. It was terrific. But anyway, we were talking about process goals, and Tom said that he had asked Coach Wooden about this one little experience. He said, Coach, if we're on the sidelines of a basketball game, and Tom early in his career was a college basketball coach. Okay. He said, I'm the assistant coach, you're the head coach. In the middle of the game, what's the greatest coach of any sport of all time focused on? And Coach Wooden, a lot of people don't know this, but he had a really funny sense of humor. He was always kind of joking around, and he's kind of, messing with Tom a little bit. He said, Tom, I'm watching to see if my guys are making their cuts in straight lines or if they're running in banana patterns. And then he shuts up. And he's kind of messing with Tom, and he's watching him out of the corner of his eye. And Tom's thinking about what the great coach just said. And he said, Coach, let me get this straight. You're not worried about the scoreboard. You don't care about winning or losing. You're watching to see if your guys are running their cuts in straight lines. And Coach Wooden said, Tom, let's be clear. Winning is important. And if I can get my guys to run their cuts in straight lines while the other team's going in banana patterns, we're going to be a little bit quicker at everything we do. And if we're a little bit quicker at everything we do, that scoreboard up there, I'm not going to need to worry about that scoreboard. Process increases results. It's paradoxical. Most people think, oh, you really should focus on the result. I call it the paradox of the product goal. Typically, the more you focus on the result, the scoreboard, the further you are from achieving the win. Think about it. If Coach Wooden's looking at the scoreboard, what's he not so focused on with his guys? He's letting them get away with banana patterns. What I would ask are the equivalent for you of straight line cuts. What's that win? And it goes back to that one must on a daily basis. What's the one most important activity that, if done daily, will cause that most important result you're looking for?
Yeah, that a lot of great, useful, practical tools there. And one of the things, Jason, that comes up, I think, for a lot of people, and you address it in your book, Relentless Solution Focus, you share, and you're very research-oriented, which is great because, like you said, it's all grounded in fact and in data. You talk about the fact that, we as people have 12,000, 60,000 thoughts a day, and 70, 80% of those tend to be negative. So as we're going through the day, we've got, we're trying to focus on those straight lines, on making our cuts right, whatever that looks like for us in our role. But then we've got these negative thoughts popping into our head on a regular basis. Share with us a little bit about how do we address those negative thoughts, because we're all going to have them, so that they don't derail us from making the straight line cuts that we need to make.
Yeah, see, Rich, now you're right at the point of mental toughness. Controlling the thoughts to focus on the things that cause success as opposed to failure. And you could say, you mean monetarily? Sure. You mean emotionally? Sure. You mean physically? Sure. Whatever thoughts you have, if they cause success, that's mental toughness. But as you said, and actually you're really low, it's not 60 to 70% of the thoughts that are negative. It's closer to 90+% of those thoughts are negative.
Okay.
We are so focused on negativity and things that could go wrong that we miss the opportunity to focus on, you're right, straight line cuts. Because remember, you can only focus on one thing at a time. So if I'm focused on the negative, I can't be focused on the positive. Here's a better way of saying it. If I'm focused on the problem, I can't be focused on the solution. And it's so normal We're biologically ingrained to focus on the negative or the problem. So the answer is, you ask the question, how? Not with a pep talk, with training, mental workouts, and success logs. All right, I'm going to run through it real quick, okay? Mental workout, centering breath. You do, ideally speaking, it's about a minute's worth of visualization. You repeat the identity statement. You take another you go centering breath, identity statement, a minute's worth of visualizing success, another identity statement, and then a centering breath. Centering breath is just breathe in for 6, hold for 2, breathe out for 7.
Okay.
Again, you say, well, exactly what should my identity statement be? Come on, you heard me give an example. Don't worry about being a perfectionist. Just get something positive.
Right.
And then what should I visualize? Visualize 3 things you did well the previous 24 hours, and then visualize 3 things you totally want to nail in the upcoming 24 hours. 10 seconds apiece. So it's about 60 seconds of visualization. All right. If you want a more detailed approach, we can look into it. There's all kinds, I've written, every book of mine talks about the mental workout and the success log. Success log, just answer these 3 questions. Previous 24 hours, what are 3 things I've done well? Upcoming 24 hours, what's one thing I want to improve? What's one action step I can take to make the improvement? If you want to throw in a 4th bonus question, 1 to 10, how well did I do in the last 24 hours getting my one must activity completed? That one most important process goal. If you start doing mental workouts and success logs, and I tell you, if you did it 3 days a week on each, and the mental workout takes literally minute and a half, minute and 40, success log ought to take a minute or less. In 3 minutes a day, you can have yourself trained at the highest level for mental toughness. See, it doesn't take nearly as long as it takes to get the bicep strong. 3 minutes a day. If you did it 3 days a week, you can't stop it from happening. Now, I prefer to do it closer to 5-6 days a week. I think it speeds up the process. Just like if I'm going to do 7 days training, 7 days training is going to be better than 3. But 3 days, you don't have to be perfect. Just get started somewhere. Start doing some training. If you don't know where to train, just daily write down 3 things you did well. Start with that.
Yeah, love that idea. We talked in our previous call a little bit about the visualization. You hear about Olympic athletes, Michael Phelps and other folks like that using visualization for their sport. I was asking, is that realistic for executives, for leaders to do it? And we went through a simple exercise. So share with us a little bit about just a couple tips on visualization for a business leader that's not an athlete today, but it's important still as part of that mental workout.
Well, here would be the most basic foundation, not to get too far into it. And remember, what I said to you, I could tell even in your tone, he's like, yeah, I know for an athlete, a lot of athletes that use the visual. Every athlete will tell you, every athlete at the high level visualizes. And everybody knows that. And you say, well, yeah, but in business, not so much. You're crazy. It's more effective in business than it is in sport because it's easier to win in business than it is at that high level in sport.
Yeah.
So I said to you, all right, Rich, I want you just right now, just visualize 10 seconds the next question you want to ask me. You remember what happened?
Yeah.
What happened? Be honest. Be honest. We're not trying to sell anything here. Remember, this is impact, and we don't want to waste anybody's time. Be honest. What happened? Just 10 seconds of visualizing something simple, something you do all day long. Next question.
Yeah, what's interesting is both the content, so the question itself, I think, was more insightful, but also my pacing. I was able to slow down. And I think so the combination of the question and the pacing became better, became more improved in 10 seconds, which was powerful.
And did you see your pacing even just right there, talking about it?
Yeah.
Improved.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt it was a higher level of performance. Here's what I would suggest, just to be just basic foundation. If you're not doing any visualizing a day, just 20 seconds. Just imagine one thing you did well in the previous 24 hours. And then imagine one thing you want to do well in the upcoming 24 hours. And try to be specific with the visualization. Try to look at an actual 10-second clip. So, if I was going to do this, I might say, okay, what was one thing I did well in the previous 24 hours? I told you before the call, I said I had a really tough call about an hour ago. College football coach tough loss, and that's just not a fun call. And if I said what I do well today, if I was going to visualize what I did well, I'm not going to visualize the whole. It was a 15-minute call. I'm not going to visualize the whole call. I don't have 15 minutes, but I know there was one time, and I wrote it down before the call. I said, this is the most important thing I'm going to say to him. And I visualized right now, if I'm replaying what I did well, I'm visualizing that one, it was a question that I asked him. Okay. And then I said, okay, tomorrow, if there's one thing I want to do well, now I'm flying, I got to fly out to Vegas tomorrow. I got a workshop. I know what it is. I got a 5.5-hour flight from Miami. I got a stack over here on my desk. I can see it. It's, I got 10 folders. I got all kinds of notes and to-dos. I'm going to visualize sitting on that plane, and just before anything else happens, I'm going to work through every single note that I have there. It's doable. I think in an hour and a half, I'll get through every single thing, but there's like 10, 15 things that need to be addressed. Emails, texts, make some notes on something. I'm going to visualize, okay, sitting down and getting that done before anything else. I'm not going to the bathroom. I'm not going to listen to music. I'm going to get that done on the plane tomorrow. Now, the likelihood of that happening, and I don't know if you could tell, but I was actually seeing it in my mind right there. It didn't take the full 10 seconds. So I was kind of talking, but I guarantee you the likelihood of that getting done is now significantly increased as opposed to before. Visualization is wildly powerful, but you got to do it. And you don't do it on a day. If I've got a big presentation tomorrow and I've never visualized, don't start just visualizing today. I mean, that's good, but it's not great. Just get in the habit of doing 10, 20 seconds a day of visualization. Do it 3 days a week. But I'll say this, and I don't say this very often. 2 things I've found in my research. If you're not using visualization on a regular basis in the business world or in the sports world, there's no possible way you can be operating at your potential. It's just not humanly possible. Same thing would be process goals. If you're not using the process goals, it's just not possible to operate at your potential. Those are the only 2 things I would tell you in my work I found I can say with confidence that you got to do those 2 things, process and visualization.
Excellent. And the one other area I'd love to tap into, Jason, before we wrap today, is because a lot of our listeners are business leaders, and you've talked about the importance of understanding channel capacity and how to master that. Maybe you could share just a few of your tips or techniques around channel capacity and why it's important for business leaders to build that discipline.
Yeah. Channel capacity, I'd tell you, it's the biggest mistake being made in the business world and in the sports world today. I'll tell you a quick little story.
Yeah.
So I have a NFL head coach friend of mine. He invites me to a game. I show up at the game. I go to the will call, and it's a field pass. Field pass means you're on the field. And basically, if you're on the field, you have access to anything. Well, I assume that's what everybody's field pass. But when I get a field pass, that's what it means. I can go in the locker room. I can go anywhere a player or coach can go. And anyway, so I watched the first half of the game, and it's halftime, and I can tell, I've been to enough games. We're a better team. We're losing 14-10. We're a better team. We had a couple of turnovers and maybe some very questionable calls. We're a better team. All we got to do is beat us in the second half, and we should win this game by, 6 points, 6 points.
Yeah.
Going to halftime, and I'm, in the NFL halftime, you got 12 minutes, and the coaches will separate. So you got defensive, offensive, and special teams. And then at the end, the head coach brings them together, and then they send them back out. And I'm listening to one of the coaches, and he's just one of these coaches that I want to play for. Anybody would want to play for. You run through a wall. But I'm listening, and he's covering, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 keys to the second half.
Wow.
And that's fine, but he's dishonoring channel capacity. Channel capacity is pretty clear. It's the biological bandwidth of the human brain, and these are the magic numbers, 3 and 1. We can manage up to 3, but really anything we're trying to focus on, improve, anything new, it's got to be 1. So if he had 14, that's fine. It would have been great if he'd have said, now, the 14 things I said, now, here are the 3 most important, and here's the 1.
Yeah.
But he didn't do that. Anyway, the offense goes out, and I want to say scored 20 I want to say the offense scored 24 points in the second half, which an NFL team, you score 24 points in a half, you're going to win that game.
Yeah.
But we end up losing the game by, I think, 8 or 11 points.
Wow.
Anyway, so I told the coach afterwards, I said, hey, can I talk to the whole staff about channel capacity? And team went on a real run, made it to the playoffs, actually went pretty deep in the playoffs and had a pretty nice season. Point is, channel capacity is the biggest mistake being made in the sports world and in the business world. My suggestion to leaders, start your day knowing what your 3 most important are, and of the 3, what's the 1? Get that 1 must done as early as you can in the day. In leadership, anytime you're having a meeting, never have more than 3 things, and don't be afraid to just have 1 thing. Have meetings more often, shorter meetings, covering less. But when you start covering more than 3 things, I'm telling you, you're overloading channel capacity. And when we overload channel capacity, it's like juggling 3 balls. You throw me a 4th. I don't drop 1. I drop them all.
Yeah.
Overloading channel capacity is the biggest mistake being made in business and in sport. And the magic numbers are 3 and 1. 3 and 1.
Well, Jason, I'd love to talk more, a couple more hours with you, but I want to be respectful of your time. I would like to go out though with 6 questions, very short questions, just to help folks get to know you on an even more personal level as we finish up. So these are the strategic 6. Number 1, what was your first job?
Detasseling corn.
Ah, okay.
The worst and first. Anything from there is improvement.
Gotcha. Number 2, what's your favorite vacation spot?
I love the ocean. So Hawaii's been good to me over the years, but anywhere on the ocean, I just find great peace in the ocean.
Number 3, what's the 1 word that best describes you?
Relentless.
Yeah. Number 4, what 1 book has had significant impact on your development?
Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yep, classic. Number 5, what's the 1 piece of advice you'd most like to share with other people that would fit on a bumper sticker?
Channel capacity, 3 and 1.
3 and 1. All right, well, to finish our 6th, most exhilarating moment you've experienced in your professional life?
Exhilarating is, it's really, people probably want to hear a different answer than the truth. I've been part of World Series, with the team, we won 2 World Series. I've been part of gold medals. I can't even count gold medals, national championships. I've been part of some huge wins, but I remember a 9-year-old little girl called me. I was at dinner one time. This was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And she had competed in her first state championship as a 9-year-old little gymnast.
Wow.
And she didn't win. She didn't even come close, but she didn't fall off in her beam routine. And I remember that having a bigger impact on me than anything else. And I won't let myself forget it, because that's why I do what I do. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily to win, although you're going to win a whole lot more with some of these things, but just having the courage to get up there and fight. And sometimes you fight hard enough and you'll stay on.
Yeah. Well said. We're going to include links to your books in our show notes. Jason, where else would you like people to follow you, your work? You do a lot of great things. If they want to get in touch with you, what are some of the best ways for folks to follow you?
I think I'm going to just keep it at channel capacity, and I'm going to say 1.
Okay. I'm
just recently, like in the last month, starting to put energy into social media. Instagram. Now, I just, honestly, I can't even get on any of these social medias other than Instagram. And I just started getting on because I just actually hired somebody. I said, I want to start making an impact in social media.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that because my kids are coming into the business. I've avoided social media to this point in my life because the masses, I don't have the ability to work with the masses.
Sure.
I've been lucky in that regard. And I didn't want to have to say no to a lot of people. So I have been sold out for 20 plus years. Anyway, we're going to start on Instagram. And I don't know if it's Jason Selk or Dr. Jason Selk. I'm assuming we're not trying to hide, but it's one of the two. give that a try. Just give that a try, because right now we're really, for the first time, like I said, trying to make an impact on helping people. We're not selling anything, not to my knowledge anyway. It's not the goal. Just trying to make an impact on giving people little pieces here and there of ways to improve from a mental standpoint.
Perfect. And we'll include a link to Jason's Instagram so that folks can follow him, follow you on that channel as well. So, Jason, a lot of really practical, useful, very inspirational stories that you've shared with us today. So thank you very much for being my guest on the show.
Rich, it was a real pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Any insights?
You play to win the game.
Any further insights?
You don't play to just play it.
Insightful.
I want winners.
I played the game to win.
I want people that want to win.
It's very insightful.
Sun Tzu, the Chinese general and philosopher who had the writings which became the book, The Art of War, said, "Being unconquerable lies within yourself." As you think about your business, your work, your occupation, are you allowing things to conquer you throughout the day? The small things, the little challenges, the little problems that pop up? Or are you using that mental toughness? Are you creating solutions rather than focusing on problems? I'd encourage all of us to think about, at least for a few minutes each day, are we being the best versions of ourselves? Meaning, are we using mental toughness to overcome the negative, to overcome the challenges, to overcome the problems, and really focus on the solutions, the progress, and what's going to take us to our goals? Thank you for listening to today's episode of Strategic Minds. I hope this conversation gave you some valuable insights that you can apply to your business and put into action. If you found this episode helpful, we'd greatly appreciate it if you'd leave a short review, maybe even a 5-star review on your podcast player. And thank you to everyone who's been sharing the podcast. Your support really helps us grow and make the world a little bit more strategic. If someone in your network could benefit from this conversation, please feel free to share it with them. If your team is ready to strengthen its strategic thinking and planning skills and get beyond the day-to-day tactical grind, visit strategyskills.com. There you can explore our workshops, online courses, strategic coaching, free Strategic Thinker newsletter, and my latest book, Strategic. You can also take your leadership development to the next level with the Strategic Fitness System, our state-of-the-art executive development platform. Until next time, remember, be strategic to be your best.